Welcome to the Know Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Vipul Vasanya, and today's guest is Henry Ammar. Henry is the founder of Make It Happen.Life, which is a platform he created to share inspiring content to help move people from fear to freedom. He's a global speaker, empowerment coach, and influencer. He's been mentioned by Forbes a bunch of times and hosts his own podcast as well, which is one of the top 10 ranking on iTunes as we speak. So Henry, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let me just start with this. What does truth mean to you?
You know what's so funny is I literally was listening to something on Truth this morning. It's crazy. It's been like the definition of it has been mulling around in my head because I'm a truth seeker, right? Like I've been that since I can remember. And since I realized like the truth really does set you free. And so for me, it's like something that like personally what it's been for me in my journey has been like seeking out all the information that I can, and then whatever resonates and provides results to me, like whatever resonates in my spirit, my soul, whatever provides results and whatever I could tangibly see through my experience or through other people's experiences, you know, I will apply. I'm like a mad scientist on myself, right? Like since I was a teenager, I'm sure we'll get into this, but like I was really insecure. I was really passive. I had all these limiting beliefs because growing up, you know, my family was amazing, but we didn't have the financial resources that, you know, we had so many things. And so growing up, I had all these like glass ceilings per se. And then as soon as I discovered like books and seminars and things like that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this stuff works. So the things that work, the things that resonate, and I'm always seeking, I'm always open. And for me, truth is something that really resonates to a place, not just intellectually, but like deeper in my soul, if that makes sense. And I know it sounds very like esoteric and very woo, you know, but like my personal experience is that. And when I tell people the truth sets you free, it's really getting into the principles of the things that work, that I believe work, and that I see through time and time and time again with like hundreds of thousands of people that's worked. So that, you know, I usually take those things that I've seen through experience and I'll test it through myself first and see what resonates, and then I'll apply it, and then I'll teach it after that. So that's kind of like my mad scientist process.
I guess it's a mad scientist process for everyone, isn't it? To find your own
Right,
truth. It's different for everyone, you know? So
right.
like, I guess that's a good segue into like, how did you come about figuring out what your truth was? If we peel back the layers of your mad and adventurous journey so far, if we go back to like when you were a teenager, like, you know, what was it like growing up and what were you sort of surrounded by at the time?
Right. The fundamental. So yeah. So for me, I remember one day looking, and I was like, I felt so insecure. Like, doesn't matter how you look on the outside, right? It's like how you really feel when you walk in a room. It's how you feel when you're going after something. It's how you feel about yourself. It's, do you think you're enough? Do you think it's whether you think or feel or whatever you do, or do I think or feel I'm enough? Do I think or feel I belong in this room? Do I think or feel I can be successful? Like all these thoughts. And I remember being a teenager and looking around saying like, man, there's so many different types of people. Like some people are confident, some people are successful, some people are this. Like we're all human beings. Like why them? Like what is it that they're doing that I am not, or what do they know that I don't know? And so I started asking better questions. When you ask better questions, you get better answers, right? So um, I I started, and then someone put a book in my hands that had like really good questions at the end of it. And it's really funny when people find out what like book it really was, because it's totally like random. But and so I I started realizing like, wait a minute, like I started getting introduced to the idea of choice. Like I get to choose my life. I get to choose, you know, where I'm at, what I'm doing, you know, like how I who I become, right? Because everything I formulated, I become to that point. And granted, some stuff came from my parents and teachings and stuff like that, but and then I slowly started reading, and then I started seeing results, and then I got obsessed. You know, I picked up books. I would ask people questions. Like I saw someone that was confident. I'd be like, hey, let me ask you a couple questions. Like, what's your story? And in my head, I'm processing, what are the principles? What are the principles? What are the principles? And I'd apply them. This worked. Keep it. Cool. You know, and then that was a process. And I think it really hit me. I tell this story fairly often, but like when I picked like legendary basketball player, right? And his story is his father unfortunately was killed on the side of the road when he was sleeping because he was too tired. Someone tried to rob him, and this was during like the finals time, I believe, in the Bulls were there and Jordan was at his peak. And then he said a comment in this book that said something like, I realized at that moment that I had a choice. I could either be the owner or be the victim. And for some reason, choice like resonated with me so much, and it resonated into like my heart. I was like, dude, this, I get to choose. And I've been giving up my choice to patterns and belief systems and the world and life and what it tells me. Like, no, I get to choose my life. I get to dictate where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do, who I want to become. Otherwise, it's just going to go back in and I'm going to be stuck, right? So that concept, the fundamental core belief and truth that I believe is the power of choice. The best decision I've ever made was to be the decider. And so I think that kicked off everything else, because now that I get to choose, where are all the tools for me to use? Like what is the operating system that my brain is running? What is the operating system that I operate in? So I started studying like the mind, the body, the spirit, you know, NLP, hypnosis, like everything I could study, I would study. I'd go to seminars, I'd go to Tony Robbins, I'd go to all these things, and I'd listen to every course I could. And then I started seeing results in my life, and I started applying to other people, and they were like having crazy results. And I would work with teams, and they would win national championships. And I'm like, oh shoot, like this stuff works. And that's how it kind of all started.
It's amazing because it's such a simple thing, making a choice, but people are, I guess, conditioned when they're growing up to just be told what needs to happen. And so they're always looking for
Right.
other people for answers. They're always looking externally. And then they feel up, that's when I guess grief sets in, because you think, oh, I'm not getting the answers I want. Okay, maybe my life isn't just supposed to be happy. It's not supposed to be successful then.
Right.
And only when we start deciding, actually, this is what I want to do. So I'm going to seek out these resources, these mentors, these type of
Right.
people. That's when I guess the world opens up, like it has for you. So can you give us some examples of that to people that are listening, of maybe some memories or stories that you remember of when you did make a good choice? What happened?
Yeah, I can give you a story when I didn't make a good choice too. You know what I
Go
mean?
for
Like,
it. Yeah.
so one thing that stuck out when you were saying that was, there was a moment in time where I used to be really passive. Like my nickname used to be passive. Like I literally would panic when it came to certain things, especially girls, right? Like for some reason, like I'd want to talk to a girl and I'd be like a deer in headlights. It was just really bad. And so I decided that everything, before I get into the choice, like everything that binds me, that enslaves me, fear, insecurity, worrying what other people think, I'm out. Like I'm not letting it operate my life. Like it will not dictate my life. Like it can counsel me, I could learn from it, but there's no way I'm going to be enslaved in my life, in my soul, my mind, and my spirit, my body, addictions, whatever it is. Like anything that I was doing that enslaved me, I was done with. And my goal was fear to freedom, right? My goal was like a real, genuine confidence in who I was, not this fake confidence, not anything else. And so in that process, I realized, okay, if I was afraid of something, I'm going to deal with it head on. I'm going to look it straight in the eyes. And if you look fear in the eyes with commitment, it runs away. If you run away, it chases after you. Right. So, and so I decided to look in the eyes. I'm not moving. Like I will stay here until I have enough courage to face you, and I will have enough courage to where it becomes confidence. And so I made that decision early on. So I had a lot of really bad experiences. I tried it, right? Like well, it started before I made the crazy decision with girls. Like it's all layered, right? I told my friend one time, there was this girl that was like super cute, and I was like, hey, that girl's like way cute. And she goes and grabs the girl and puts her right in front of me. And I panicked. Like I was like, hey, hi, my name is Henry. Like I may have introduced myself multiple times. I don't know what I said, man. And it was like a really short conversation. It was really awkward. And I left and I said, never again am I gonna, like, never, I need to learn, never again. So I literally started facing my fears. I literally started saying, okay, I'm gonna share things I want to share. I'm gonna talk to people I want to talk to. And for me, it was a longer process because I didn't understand all the mind hacks, all this stuff like that. But I would go to the mall and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to talk to somebody I'm nervous to talk to about something. And I remember the first time, this is a good Kickstarter, and Mel Robbins does it in a different way now, but I did this like, it was like 15 years ago, where I'm at the mall and I see this. I'm like, okay, I'm facing my fear today. I'm going to talk to one person that I feel uncomfortable with. And I say that, I look over and there's a girl that's like gorgeous girl working in Abercrombie. And I panicked and I was like, oh gosh, I guess that's my person. I paced them off for 20 minutes, and I call my cousin who's like Rico Suave with girls. I'm like, hey, There's a girl in front of me. I have to share something with her. What do you recommend? He goes, how many steps away from her are you? I go, 10. He goes, you ready? I go, for what? He goes, 10, 9, 8. And I'm stepping towards her while I'm on the phone, like 7, 6, 5. And then she's like, and she's looking at me like, what are you doing? And I turn on my phone. I'm like, hi, my name is Henry. I don't know what I said. And I walk away. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter about the outcome. I'm celebrating the fact that I faced my fear. And for me, it starts with, I tell people, yes, I visualize the outcome. I see the outcome, but I celebrate the fact that I had courage, because I have to celebrate my wins. In order to condition my brain, I celebrate my wins. So a lot of people are like, oh man, I did this and I failed. You did it. You still did it. Like, those two words are bigger than anybody else is doing it. A lot of people are enslaved by fear. So if you did something you're afraid of and didn't work out the way you did, celebrate the fact that you did it, so you could become a courageous person. Because a courageous person is the kind of person that is going to break free, gain confidence, get successful, have a better mindset. It takes that barrier, that to get through that void of discomfort takes courage and takes awareness. So, that was a big one. And, making the decision and making the choice, it's, man, there's so many things I've done that have been just stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, on a constant basis. I tell people, I was in New York. We had a meeting with Yoko Ono, and I don't know if you know who she is, but was married to John Lennon. I mean, amazing, crazy things they've done together. John Lennon was in the Beatles, and we had a meeting in their apartment, which was amazing to be in. And I remember getting back, and I remember sitting in the room I was staying at, and I said, if people knew how often I had to tap into my courage to step out of my comfort zone, then they would think I was psychotic. But that's why I believe my life has accelerated so greatly. Like, I grew to be a director of investments at a $2 billion real estate company in 3 years when it takes people 10. I did all these things, but it wasn't because I'm special. It's because I've learned these characteristics of courage and learned characteristics of, mind, body, spirit. What do we do? And how do we really take charge of our life and do it? Because it's really just principle based. There's no difference between me and somebody that's crushing it, other than the fact that they're applying certain principles and I'm not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think a lot of it is to do with just pushing to the edge of your comfort zone, and then a whole
Right.
new reality opens up. It's like when you're walking through
Right.
fog, you can only see the few steps ahead of you until you decide to walk through it. Then the next part of the road opens up, and that's how I always
Right.
think about it. But you can't see the full road unless you're willing to take the first few steps.
Right.
You just
Absolutely.
can't.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great analogy. It's true. Sometimes you just got to go, and if it doesn't work, like, I believe, for me, this is my personal belief, and this helps me get through things in the most optimistic way. People say it's optimism. It's realistic, whatever you truly believe, right? Like, you're manifesting, right? So I believe everything works out for my good, right? And I believe that no matter, even if I take a few steps and it doesn't work out the way I thought it did, I learn and grow from it because it's preparing me for what I'm really going to get. And so that's a more productive way to look at things, And so, like you said, there are moments where I took the first 5 steps and I was like, oh, cool. Behind that fog is going to be this. And behind that fog was a crazy monster that was like, what the hell did I just get into? Right. And then you're like, wait a minute. Okay. What's my lesson here? Who can I become from this? What do I need to do? It's the difference between a disempowering perspective and an empowering one. So a lot of people are scared to take the first 5 steps because they're afraid what's behind it. It doesn't matter. You'll be ready for it. And if you're not, you'll grow into being ready for it. And I think we just have to step and do, and like, align with what's true to you and then step. I think it's 2 steps. Like, you have to align, resonate, and go. Or just go and you'll learn the longer way. Right. So
Yeah, it's the whole concept of growing through life, because I think I've heard you say this before. Instead of going through life, you're growing through life, and it's 2 different
yeah,
perspectives. There you have one guy who's just going through the motions, and you have the other guy who's going through the motions, but he's learning the lessons along the way. So he's becoming the wiser one, because the next step that
absolutely.
he takes is more powerful than the last one. It's more decisive,
Exactly.
it's more intentional.
Absolutely.
So in the end, I think those are the guys who end up having a more intentional life, just like you have, because you've learned along the way and you've decided to apply the principles. So let's take it from passive, like
Yeah.
you being the passive guy in your teenage years. What happens from there? How do you make the transition from where you are to I think it's is it the music industry first? Like what is it? What are those steps look
Yeah, I started in the music industry, and even though I'd be on stages with all these people, I would have all these patterns running. But stepping out of my comfort zone to being on stages with people, like, definitely helped me stretch. Because they say your comfort zone, like, say it's here, and you step out of it, it grows, and then it grows, and then it grows, and then it grows. So like my comfort zone now is a lot wider than where it was. Like, I do things and people are like, did you just say that? I'm like, yeah. Like, I would never would have said it before. Like, I'll say things pretty straightforward now, and everyone's like, when before I'd dance around it for 27 minutes, right? And now I'm like, what, that doesn't, and I'll say something, and my friends are like, wow, thank you for, like, and I tell my friends, if you don't tell me the truth, you don't love me, right? So anyways, going back to that guy, stepping out of my comfort zone was really big. Stepping on stages and having to believe in myself and having to tell myself, okay, get on stage. And I felt like I always had to work harder than everybody else because things didn't come to me as natural, right? Like, naturally, like, I would, all the guys in my singing group, they would learn the parts. They would like just go nail it, and I would have to go home and get on the piano like, and I'm like, oh, why do I have to do this? But it was that work ethic that I had to do, sink or swim, right? I wanted it bad enough that taught me how to work and be willing to put my pride aside and say, I want this bad enough, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get there. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? And I resolved, like, this is done. And the second I realized that passivity like, bound me, or the second I realized that, like, insecurities were binding, like, anything that I felt like I was a Cajun, I was like, nope, like, I will do whatever it takes. So I bought books. There's a really good book called The Assertiveness Workbook that was actually one of my first books. And when I learned the definition, I said it on one of my podcast episodes called The Perspective on Truth. And I broke it down a little bit, but I learned that there's a big difference between assertiveness, passivity, and aggressiveness. And there's more, but like, passiveness, like being passive was based on fear, you know, and being aggressive was based on fear. But being assertive was like, you could say what you feel and let other people feel the same. And if they don't believe you or agree with you, then it doesn't define you. So it was a deeper rooted thing. It wasn't just being passive. I was afraid of not being accepted if I said something, so I started digging deeper into, like, my belief system and my stories I told myself and where my focus was when I was speaking to people. Because when you start feeling a certain way, like, say people are listening, they feel fear. Like, don't resist it. It's telling you something. Your emotions are indicators, right? So I started listening to myself and say, okay, well, what am I focused on right now? Oh, shoot, I'm focused on the story that if I say something, then they're not going to agree with me. If they don't agree with me, then I suck. And if I suck, I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, I won't be loved. And if I won't be loved, then it doesn't matter, right? So what's my focus? And then the second thing is, what is my self-talk? Like, I started being aware of what I told myself, because we convince ourselves more than anybody else, right? And so what's my self-talk? Like, is my my self-talk was, oh shoot, like, they're looking at you, dude, and they're probably thinking, your hair is crazy, right? Like, whatever that is. And so I looked, I was like, wow, the same person can walk in a room and have a room look at them, and the first person be like, oh my gosh, they're looking at me, like, is my hair cool? The second person's like, oh, they're looking at me, man, those girls must love me. It's same experience. I mean, same situation, different experience, because of different perspectives, because of different belief patterns we ran. So I started reading books like the Assertiveness Workbook, fear-based books, going to seminars, and like, everything I possibly could dissect on it, I started reading and applying, because I was like, look, the worst thing that happens is I learn something. So I was willing enough to be courageous. I was willing enough to learn and be open to truth and learning from people that have maybe gone through it before me. And I was willing to try things out myself, right? Like, I learned about meditation, I do it, prayer, I do it, like, and I became obsessed with being free. Like, I came obsessed with being free. So whenever it's funny, now that I understand what I really did, I created a trigger. If you like, NLP is like, how your subconscious mind works with your conscious mind, and we all operate on certain triggers. Like, someone says something and it triggers something in your past, and your emotions start riling up, right? I created a trigger to feeling enslaved. So whenever I felt enslaved, it woke me up, and I was like, no, what am I doing right now? Like, I made it so bad. I made myself believe it was so bad to be enslaved that when I got there, I couldn't tolerate it. Like I had to do something about it. So I became more afraid of being afraid. I became more afraid of being bound than I was of doing the thing that I was afraid of.
What
And
was
that
it?
was the beginning process.
What was the trigger?
The trigger was whenever I felt enslaved, like when I knew how, like we all know how it feels when you get caught up in your mind and your mind's wired, or you get on autopilot, or you start feeling fear. Like we know the feeling. Like I became really aware of like when I'm afraid, I felt it here, or my mind starts feeling like it's a slot machine, or I start going to autopilot. The second that happened, I would catch myself, and it was an indicator to me, like, oh, this is happening. And if you keep doing this, Henry, you're going to live your life. And I let myself feel the pain of it. You're going to live your life enslaved. You're going to be passive your whole life. You won't be successful. You won't have the family you want. And I just stacked all this stuff that I didn't like on it. So my nervous system was like, no way are we ever going to live that way. And then I started getting the tools to actually help me do that, which is tools that you teach, tools that I teach on my podcast, tools that I'm writing a book about. Actually, I'm writing a book right now that's really dissecting the tools of going from fear to freedom. Like, how do we really liberate ourselves from that stuff, And so there are tools out there that take you the process much quicker than it took me. But, I'm glad I did it because I learned like the crazy way of what works and what doesn't work,
So after all of that, do you feel like where you are today? Do you feel like you found your truth now?
Oh, I'm always exploring, man. I hope I never, like, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, if we haven't spoken in over a year, let me reintroduce myself because my growth game is strong, right? Like I hope I'm so much in a better place next year if you talk to me than I am this year. Like, because I want to, like, we are amazing beings. We have so much crazy potential, right? Like, I believe I'm so much more bold and courageous now, but I know I haven't scratched the surface. I know that what I'm putting out in the world is not even close to what I'm going to be putting out in the world. Like, the potential we all have is so crazy limitless to me that I believe I found so much truth and it's so good, but I'm hungry for more. It's so amazing.
Well, why do you think most people don't stop themselves from finding their potential? Or don't, let me ask you this way, they don't fulfill their potential before they die. Like, we have a lot of people like in the grave right now who have died with their gifts, with their talents, and it's just like, as Les Brown says, like, this is what keeps me up at night. Like Les Brown puts it in a really good way. It's like, if you don't fulfill or explore those gifts or talents, then when you're in your grave or you're on your deathbed, they're going to come to you and speak to you and say, we came to you, only you could have
Right,
given us life, and now we're
right.
going to have to die. Like, well, why you had 70 years, 80, 90, 100 years, why don't you do anything with it? And so I just want to get
100%.
your perspective on it. Like, why do people allow that to happen?
You know, I'm in fear, right? Like, really, it's, to me, the baseline thing is fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of, it's certainty, like fear of the uncertain, right? Like we would like to know what's certain when in reality nothing's really certain. You know, I believe the baseline thing is a certain baseline fear that we've grown with, and belief patterns and systems that we've grown with. But the root beneath the belief, if we're paralyzed by something, it's fear. And it's. I mean, think about it. Like, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of what other people think, fear of all these things. And there's certain things you can be afraid of, like fundamental things of, like, if I jump off this cliff, then I'll die. Like, yes, don't go near the edge of that cliff because you might fall, right? Unless you have a parachute and you want to do it and you want to be or whatever it is and you've done it. But I believe the fundamental things is when we expand fear into things that shouldn't belong in is where it keeps us paralyzed. So I think it's the baseline root of all things. I think if we really stop to ask ourselves, what are we really afraid of? If I do this, then what do I believe is going to happen if I do this?
Exactly,
And
yeah, and I think the best way to that has helped me, and I'm sure this has helped you as well, is to picture your life at the end, and then to say, like, would I be happy with it, or would I die with regret? What is it that I haven't yet done, and then let me do it now, because now's the only time you have to do it, right?
100%,
So
100%, 1,000,000%. I mean, honestly, like, I think realizing mortality for me has done so much. When my grandmother passed away and seeing my father pass away in front of me, my mother passed away in front of me, like, you realize, oh my freaking goodness. Like, I was working at a real estate place. I was director of investments for a $2 billion real estate company. Amazing company. They were amazing. I had the 16th floor, I had the ocean view office in Santa Monica, the sexy title. They had money to buy whatever we wanted. We bought a $200 million building. We bought, like, it was just amazing. And I'm sitting here like, and then my mother got diagnosed with cancer. And before she was even diagnosed, I was like, what? Like, what am I doing? Like, why do I feel so uncomfortable here? Like, I have all these things, like I'm making money and I'm doing this. And then she got diagnosed. As I felt uncomfortable at my job already, like it was weird. Like I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And then she got diagnosed, but I didn't know that, like, I didn't come to the conclusion of it. And through the process of seeing her go through what she went through and seeing her in the hospital, I said, you know what? Like, God forbid that's me anytime soon. God forbid that's me anytime at all. You know, I hope I die at 125 healthy and I just disappear, right? Like in the perfect way. But like, well, whatever that means, one day that's going to be me. And what am I going to say I did with my life? I bought a $200 million building. Like, is that really what I'm going to think about? Because I don't think about it right now. You know, and I thought back about my life, like where, you know, every time I moved, I had this box next to my desk and it had a bunch of certificates, you know, and what I had was, I pulled it out and it was my graduation certificate, magna cum laude from USC business school. Cool. I remember that being the biggest thing in my life. The award, the Grammy certificate for being on a song with Gladys Knight on her album, and this award and that award and a life coaching award and this award. Like it was, I was like, these are in a box. At one moment, that was everything to me. But what really lights me up, it was the fact that, like, using my gifts and my talents and my life experience to help other people be liberated, to help other people fulfill their life and live fulfilled lives and like break free from the bondage that's binding them, the fears and the insecurities, and getting them to confidence, right? From fear to freedom is. So I went through this process and I was like, when I looked at my mother, I was like, you know, when that's me, I want to look God in the eyes and say, I gave it all back. All of it. I gave it all back. I did the best I could. And I'm a truth seeker. So I really want to know what's operating in my life. And I realized that a lot of the things that I was operating in my life were lies, that I had to be this, that this was right. And I was like, wait a minute. It feels differently when you're operating in your flow, when you're operating in truth, you know, in what you resonates to you. So for me, mortality was really important to me, to recognize that the Henry that's sitting here right now in 50, 60 years may have a few wrinkles and may have white hair, but it's gonna be a different set of white hair. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be natural white hair, right? Not bleached. So like that's the reality, but I'm so grateful for that reality. It's not scary to me because it makes me alive. Like I don't want to live my life existing. I want to live my life alive. If that makes sense.
It does make 100% sense, and it's so difficult to see people who aren't living like that when you're living like that, because I just want to shake them and say, like, you don't know when you're going to go. Like if we all had a clock in front of us and the time, and it was just like, you know, like the grains of sand were just going, like everyone would be acting different. But because we don't see it, we think, oh, okay, you know, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week, or I'll think about it later. And that's what ends up happening over the years, and decades pass. And then we realize, wow, I've just wasted so much time. And for what? I've just followed other people's approval or other people's, another person's path, you know? So
I love that you said that. I love it. And because I love you said when you follow other people's approval, also people don't recognize that they're important, that they have a gift to give the world, right? It may be different than yours and mine. You have this platform, you're doing Know Your Legacy, you're sharing it with people, like, you know, you're always promoting this. And for me, I'm sharing my platform. But like everybody has something to give back, and it could be simple, and everybody gives back in different ways. Sometimes the way I give back isn't my podcast episode, even though all these people are messaging me about it, isn't my speaking to all these people. Sometimes it's just seeing somebody at the store that doesn't know my platform and show them love and help them recognize their greatness in their own way. Sometimes it's smiling at somebody, saving somebody's life because you acknowledge them. Like sometimes it's art, sometimes it's speaking, sometimes it's what you do for your family. Like everybody has something to give. And until we accept that fully and own the gifts we have and recognize the gifts that we have, we don't give them away, you know, because we believe what other people tell us our gifts are, or what we believe what the world tells us we should be like, when everybody is different. Like you weren't made differently to be put in a box. Like not everybody is crazy Henry, you know, like, and not everybody is that. Like I can't touch the people you can touch. You know, you can't touch the people I can touch. Maybe we can cross over some of them, but there's some people. This is a crazy story. I sat with a really cool Amish guy, and we were talking about like the influence he's having in his community, and you know, it was amazing. Like they have the dune buggies, and you know, he had the outfits. Like it was really cool. And I walk in wearing like these chains and like this blonde hair and my jeans, you know, and my like freaking like all this jewelry and whatever. And I'm like, well, we are like two completely different people, but with a goal to do good in the world. And he looks at me at the end and goes, you know what, Henry? If you walked into my community preaching what you preach, they would laugh at you and tell you to leave. And if I walked into your community preaching what I preach, they would laugh at me and tell me to leave. He goes, we each have a purpose and a mission with what we are, with who we are at our core and who we've become. And we can continually become somebody. In my head, I was like, that's so true. You know, if someone came on there was like, you guys live a good life and do this, and he's wearing like, they're wearing the outfit, they'll be like, okay, cool. Like most people won't listen. I mean, I will, but like, it's just everybody has something to give. And it's in our own platforms. It's when we finally know who we are and hold a mirror to ourselves and get honest about ourselves that we can make a difference.
Yeah, there's two things I want to say. Is the first thing from what you just said, the messages are different. The message itself might be the same fundamentally, but the messages are different because everyone's going to resonate with a different message. In the personal development one, we read hundreds of books, right? You've read a lot, I've read a lot, but they all fundamentally say the same thing, but they're all coming from a different perspective of life. So you're fascinated to see, what's this person saying? How is he saying it? I actually understand this a lot better than when I read it in this book. Like that's what makes life interesting, because it's a different mix of different ingredients to make this one big cake of success. And
100%.
You just pick things that make sense to you in this lifetime. And the second thing about approval, which I've realized, and I think you have from what you're telling me, is when you walk into a room, you're thinking about your hair, let's just say. The people that you think are judging you are also insecure about something.
100%.
When you realize that, then everyone is the same. So it's just
1,000,000%. Like the people that are secure don't judge other people. You don't need to. I tell people like, if you judge me and you say something about me, you're running it through your own filter, right? Like that's why, like your opinion of me, I'll listen. I'll say, like, say you said, Henry, you're a jerk. I'll be like, did I do anything to make him feel like I don't like? No, like I don't know. Like I'll take in what I could take in and learn from it, and what I don't resonate with, I'll give away. Like, you know, but people run their own patterns. Like if you look at somebody that's insecure and acting a certain way, you don't like it. It's because you may not like that within yourself. You know, but also on the flip side, of the positive note, if you see something you love in somebody else, it's because that part of you loves it in somebody else. If you spot it, you got it. Right? Like
yeah.
So if I look at somebody in a room and I'm like, oh, look at that person. It's like, you don't like something in yourself. So why don't you, you know, that's a good indicator that something's, you know, everybody has crap in their diapers and you should probably get a new one yourself first. Right? Like, and same for me, whenever I look at somebody, I have a feeling about it. I'm like, ooh, let me look inward for a second. That was crazy, Henry. You believe that about yourself, or something happened in your life that made you believe that I need to clear out. But I love that you said that. It's 100% true. Nobody validates you, man. Nobody does. You know, they could help you grow, but that's it.
Exactly. And that's why it's important. Going right back to the beginning of the conversation, you're talking about self-talk. Like that is what helps you validate yourself. It's what you say to yourself. It's whatever you say and you affirm is what you end up becoming. You know, because the internal world ends up being your external world. And so that's why that's why personal development is so important, because you're trying to figure out what have I learned and what do I need to unlearn, because there's probably a lot more that you need to unlearn first, right?
100%. 1,000,000%. We have access to tools like this podcast, like the podcast we have, like the books and everything. We have access to tools to learn how to operate this operating system that we've been entrusted with. Like there's so much, like it's crazy and it's amazing. And so how to unlearn stuff, how to learn stuff, it's like, it's really cool, man. This stuff fascinates. As you can tell, I get so excited about it. I'm like, man, this is like, I'm you know, I'm ready to go do I'm ready to go do something right now. I'm like, what are we doing? Let's go. You know, like it's so cool to recognize that right now, everybody watching or listening can make one decision that'll change everything.
100%.
So take charge of their life and learn all the principles and go for it.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the resources are free as well nowadays. You know, you've got books that are really cheap on Amazon, but if you can't afford those, you've got free audio books on YouTube and then a ton of articles and stuff like that online. So it just takes taking the decision to want to change and to start asking the question. Because once you ask the question, you enter the rabbit hole and that's it. Like you will continue down there because you start to
Yeah,
find out more and more, uncovering more about yourself. Because to me, and it sounds like this has been the case for you as well, is once you start, it becomes a journey of figuring out who you are, and then you everything else fades away, like judgment of other people. It's just like, who am I? Like this, I'm just trying to figure out me. Forget what you think,
100%.
forget your judgment, your validation. This is just my game. I'm trying to figure out how to win.
Right, 100%, man, 100%. And I think in the process, something that's really important, I think, for everybody listening to know is you have to love yourself in the process, right? You're going to uncover things about yourself you may not like, but you got to love yourself in that space because there's always going to be growth. And I think the lack of self-love is a major problem in the world. I really believe there's an epidemic. I know it. I travel the whole world and I speak to people all over the world, literally. And I see the patterns everywhere. The lack of self-love, the fears, insecurities, like I see them, and I love holding a mirror to them. And when they start going down the rabbit hole, they're first going to uncover a lot of great things about themselves, and things are like, shoot, I've been operating for like 30 years in this pattern. And then they start going down the wrong rabbit hole. But like, no, like, thankfully, doesn't matter how old you are, it's never too late to be free. And guess what? When you go to that level, you're going to elevate and elevate and elevate. And that's the beautiful part. But in the process, you've got to love on yourself and be patient with yourself, right? In the process, but work your tail off, but be patient at the same time. And my friend had what was the phrase she used? She said it was, I'll remember it, but she said it was something like a patience where you do the best you can. It's an active patience where you're active in what you're doing and then you're patient in the process. And I think people really need to understand that process is like, when you go down this rabbit hole of personal development, don't go down there thinking, oh gosh, I have to fix myself and I'm so bad. It's like, go down there thinking, dude, I'm freaking amazing and I'm excited to step into even being more amazing. I'm freaking awesome. Like, and it's not, and I do have these qualities I don't love. Like right now, there's things in my life that I'm like, ooh, man, I just realized that I got to break free from that belief. But the second it comes up, I don't beat myself up. I'm like, thank you. Because whatever comes up for me is what's ready for me to overcome,
Exactly. So it all
you know?
starts with, yeah, it all starts with self-love, because if you can't love yourself, you can't expect others to love you. And so
Right.
it's very important to move from that space rather than looking for validation of love from, I guess, externally from others
Yeah.
around you. So I mean,
100%.
for yourself then, like where does Make It Happen.Life fit in, and how did that all come about?
I think there's so much information out there, and I think I was in the music industry, so I'm really familiar with pop culture. I'm really familiar with, that whole world, and I actually love it. Like I love to realize what people are into and why, and this and that. Like I'm very intrigued by that world, like mass media, and I realize that there's such a space. And a lot of the people I speak with, I work with celebrities and influencers in coaching, and I work with different people, and those people in that space want to do good, but they're kind of in their route. And people come to me and are like, Henry, I want to do good with this. And executives from like major media channel, what can we do? What can we do? And I became the person that people were asking questions to. And I was like, why don't we bring real empowerment through pop culture? Why don't we bring it to the masses? Why don't we take what they're already doing? Like I'm partnered with the Exit Festival now. They're amazing in Europe. They have 7 festivals in 6 countries. I mean, they're incredible. They've done the coolest stuff in 20 years. Next year's their 20th year, and they've made such an impact on the world. So, the founder and he's an incredible guy. Oh my gosh. And like, we sit there and we always talk about how we can do good in the world, how we can raise awareness and wake people up and empower people. And so that's a pop culture thing where this year we had David Guetta, Martin Garrix, French Montana, Migos, Ziggy Marley, goes on and on, 25 stages, right? So you have all these people, they're having a good time. How do we they're already there having a great time. While they're having a good time, how do we make their life a million times better? So that became the question. How do I impact the world at the highest level? It was really through pop culture. So it's really now creating all these really cool things that impact people on a massive scale. So it's going to be really fun to see it all manifest, so that's how it happened.
Like, so yeah, that's amazing, by the way. So you're sort of putting it on steroids almost, making people have a 10x experience. So what are some of the, if you give people an idea of some of the things that you're involved with to help bring that to the forefront?
Yeah. So, it starts with like my personal brand is Henry. I speak across the world. I'm writing a book. I have my podcast. I'm doing another retreat in Bali. We're announcing it probably maybe by the time this comes out around May. I do stuff like that on my own. That's more intimate. And then the bigger things, my podcast, and then also like the Exit Festival is a really, really big thing. That is, the platform is really big. We're creating new festivals, new retreats, new things with them, but also taking what they already have and continually evolve it, right? And so that's one thing, which is massive. The second thing is, so I'm working on a project right now, and I could just briefly touch on it because it's still like in the process of a movie project with a bunch of influencers that we can do to really tap in on a massive scale, which is really, really cool. That's one project that's under works. My book is really exciting. I mean, I think I have too much information. So people are like, I think your book's too long. I'm like, I know, I'm gonna cut it down. So they're like, I think you have 3 books in one. And I was like, I know, I'll cut it down to like the most important things. So I'm in the process of that right now. And then there's a couple of things that are still in the works with different media companies and different things like that, and I know I'm being very vague for a reason, but like there's so much behind the scenes, but I will announce it as soon as I can, that are to me going to next year tip things on a massive scale in the next year or 2 for sure. And so it's all these downloads that I had as I was thinking, okay, how do I use, and this is a good question for everybody listening, is how to, I look at my experiences. It's very unique to different people. I was in the music industry, then I started my own company, then I sold my shares. I went to USC, then I went to commercial real estate, and then I went to, entrepreneurship, and then I, got into this. But I've been obsessed with human behavior for 20 years because of my own hero's journey, my insecurities, my fears, my bondage. And then I made myself free. So everybody listening, like, what's your experience, right? Like, what is your hero's journey? What did you have struggled with that you're overcoming, that you overcome? What is your passion? And asking the question of like, what's my passion? What lights me up? What makes time disappear? What have I overcome? What has been my unique experience in life? What lights me up? And then you go back and look at your experience and you package it all up, and life has prepared you to give something back to the world in a very unique way. And I look at my life. So my life is entertainment, pop culture, but it's mainly been personal development because I've had to develop this guy sitting, talking to you now, because the person that's talking to you is definitely an enhanced version, a more authentic, real, empowered version of the guy that was back there running his patterns, right? But I love that guy back there because guess what? The people that were back there, like that insecure Henry, it took him courage to get me to where I am now. And in 3 years, it's going to take this guy courage to get me to where I'm going to be there, So what is your experience? What is your hero's journey? What did you have to overcome? What is your passion? What makes time disappear? You answer those questions and you may have a closer idea of what you're supposed to give the world. And so my life was entertainment, was human development, was pop culture. I love having so much fun, man, but I love doing it in a productive way. So my thing is, how do we bring that to the masses?
So it's always thinking about impact. So looking at your experiences and then how can you use that and package it to then bring impact to the world. And I guess that is what's going to help you feel like you're giving back and productive and living in alignment with the truth all at the same time, if that makes sense.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
So what was because I know obviously you're quite heavily involved with like pop culture and entertainment, and just to go back like to the start, because I know we briefly touched on it, but like what were your parents and stuff doing? Like were you always in that environment of entertainment and pop culture?
No way. Yeah, no, my parents came to this country with $200 in their pocket 2 years before I was born. Not even speaking a language, escaping a war, which is a really interesting topic right now in the world, right? So like, and it was crazy. And they came to this country, didn't know how to speak it. My dad got into, learned the language, got into aerospace, started building parts of the space shuttle. So aerospace engineering stuff. And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she just worked at the school I went to as a neonate in elementary school and just stayed at home. So my parents, had no idea. When I was doing music, my dad's like, what are you doing? Like, go do law, go do something, like that's the rule, right? And until one day, so they had no idea. I was always being discouraged. Like, they were supportive, but they're like, but you need to be doing this, right? And so until my dad saw me open up for Aaron Carter one day when he was popular back, well, he was more, his teenage bop years, and girls were going crazy and screaming. And I was like, okay, fine, you could do music, So, but like they weren't in that at all entertainment realm. But, however, actually, one thing that was interesting is my mom's twin brother was a musician. He was a pretty popular musician, and he was an amazing musician. But I didn't grow up with him. But in our blood somewhere there was music. So he was like an incredible musician. So I believe that it was her twin brother. So that probably has something to do with it too. But my dad did love music, actually. My dad would just sit in his room listening to music all the time.
It's amazing
Yeah.
though, isn't it? Like they came to this country. Where did they come from? Sorry.
They were from Lebanon.
Okay, fine. Yeah, Lebanon. So it's
Yeah,
amazing.
and they were like in the mountains, and they were like escaping. They didn't want to be a part of anything like, any fighting. Like they were going to force my dad to go into war and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to do anything. So he left, and it was crazy. And it's a crazy story. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, it's weird how it all works out because now you've just been brought to a place where like you've got endless opportunity, and it's just down to you
Right.
to make the most of it. So, like, what's your relationship with them now? Because obviously, growing up, it must have been like a lot of grind and struggle and like trying to figure stuff out. And
Right.
now that your life's like, I can only assume drastically changed. What's the relationship like now?
You know what? I mean, well, both of them passed away, but before they passed away, it was good. I mean, it got exponentially better, right? Like I think they saw the evolution in my life. They saw the growth in my life. You know, my father didn't get a chance to see what I'm doing. He passed away when I was still at USC. So he didn't get a chance to see me at my job or see me doing what I do. My mother got a chance to do it. She would, go hear me speak and do stuff. And I think it was just really cool, but I think they saw my dedication to growth and to spirit and to life and to truth and to emotional intelligence and strength. Um, and I remember the last thing my father told me was, he looked me in the eyes, he goes, Henry, like, I know you're not where you want to be, but I'm not worried about you, because I see your relationship with God. I see your relationship with yourself. I see your relationship with things, and I see how much you've grown in just a short time period that you've been working at it. So, that was kind of cool to get from him, because, he was always like, pushing me. But then right at his deathbed, to hear those words was really, really touching to me.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine them being so as well. Like, what were the most important lessons you took away from your mom and dad?
Ooh, um, my mom was very loving. Like she was very looked to help people a lot. Actually, both of them were very service based. Literally, the girl I was with, just to compliment him, he literally took it off and gave it to her. Like literally gave her the shirt off his back. Like literally, I was like, Dad, it's like she was complimenting your shirt. She wasn't saying she wants. She was like, no, it's okay. She likes it. She can have it. It's good. It's okay. I have more shirts. I was like, Dad, like she didn't mean that. Like you're much bigger than she is, anyways. So like, that example of selflessness was really, really important to them, and love was really important to them. And granted, they had their struggles. They were in a new country, and a lot of crazy family stuff. But at the core basis, especially toward the end of his years, was like such an incredibly he was always loving, but incredibly loving soul. My mother was very loving. Like my friends needed a place to stay, no question. The people would call my mom like Mama Sue, because she acted as everybody's mom. So for me, I think the core basis of love was a really, really big one that they instilled in my sister and me. My sister's very similar. Like, my sister knows I need something. Like I just, all of a sudden it's like, it just happens. I'm like, dude, I didn't say that. Like, I just brought it up in my head. Like, I want to go to this concert. She's like, I got you tickets. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I just said I was thinking about going to the concert, she's like amazing. So that's been embedded into my soul. And I'm really grateful for that, because it's a guiding force in my life, right? Like love is the healing factor. And I genuinely have so much love for people. And like, I am so grateful that was instilled in me.
Yeah, it's amazing because I guess that then changes the direction of how you approach your life, because you're coming from a place of service all the time. Like
Right.
you always think, how can I help this person? How can I help this person?
Right.
And do you think it just expanded your life? Like just thinking of
A
it in
million
that way?
percent. Because my thought process now, and has been for a while, everything I touch I want it better than it was before I touched it. Otherwise, why was I in its presence? Whether it's a person's life, a business, a song, a building, a company, a team. If Henry Ammar walks into it and it's not better, then why was I even there? Like, that's my thing. Like, why can I love that person, help that person know it? Can I help that business thrive? Can I help that team thrive? And so that's my philosophy. And it's really made me really aware of people. It's really made me learn myself, because I realized in order to love them the best, I need to be the best. So it's really made me have self-love. So that whole guiding system of love is like really a foundational principle in my life. It's probably
Yeah,
the most foundational.
definitely. And I
That and
found that,
truth, love and truth.
yeah, definitely, because I found that to be the case for myself. It's like, it's the same analogy that most people have heard about the oxygen mask. When you're on a plane, yeah, you need to put it on first before you can help someone else. And in
Right.
life, if you want to be of service and you want to make this world a better place than before you got here, then self-love automatically comes into play. Because if you're not happy with the way you are, you're not meditating, you're not exercising, you're not reading, whatever it is you need to do, then how can you then approach life or people or situations in
Right.
the best way possible? You're not going to perform at
Right.
your highest. And so it all comes back to, what am I doing? What do I need to give myself first? And then I can go out into the world and give to others. So just to get into the final few questions then, the first one being, if you were going back to the age of 18, with everything you know now, is there anything different you'd tell that Henry?
Oh man, so many things, man. I would probably teach that Henry all the hacks I know now to get to where I am quicker. But I mean, the experience has been great. I would just probably, I mean, everybody says this answer, but I would just really let him know that, like, just hold a mirror to him and let him know who he really was, who he really is at that time. That all those things were just patterns. And I was still discovering that, at that age. So I would go to him, look, like, you're good, you know, and these are the tools. This is the way your operating system works in your mind. This is the way all this stuff works and things work out. So, like, here it is, so I'd probably just tell them you're good, and just to have self-love and to have, just to understand what real confidence is and what fear is and things like that. So
Yeah, no, it's
probably
all,
I'll probably give him my book, tell him to read
here,
it.
read this.
Dude, this is all the things that took you forever to learn. Learn it in a year, you're good.
No, that'd be amazing if we could
I
actually
look
do
back and I'm like, man, if I knew everything I knew, right now when I was 18 years old, it would be insane.
Yeah, the thing
That's
is
what I
that
always say though.
at the same time, though, I think it's just, that's what life is, though, isn't it? That's the
It's
adventure,
100%.
figuring it out.
Right.
Like, the fact that you don't know the answers, don't get stressed out. That's the game.
It's a
Like, to
journey,
figure it
right?
out, you know. So
Uh,
that's where the fun is, until you start
it's
thinking
true.
that way. Yeah, because most people are like, oh, I wish I knew this sooner, or I wish I never did this to this person, or I wish I made this.
Right.
It's just like, that's
Yeah,
you know what, at the time, that was the best decision you made with the knowledge you had. That,
exactly.
that's it.
100%. And that's the cool part, is it makes me even more excited about the now, because I'm like, what world don't I know of now? Because at 18, that was the world I knew. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, there's probably so much more, right? I'm gonna look back in 20 years from now and be like, dude, if that Henry knew what I knew now, it's like, that's what's so cool, like you said about life. Like, that's why I'm a never ending truth seeker. Like, I never think I got it all. Like, you tell me something, I'll be like, cool. You know what I mean? Like, this is cool. Anyways, I'm a nerd about this stuff. It's so fun.
Yeah. No, I love it, though. And I hope that people have taken away loads of nuggets up to this point. So the second question is, if there's one statement, just one statement that you could write on a piece of paper that would go into a time capsule for generations from now to read, what would you write to them?
Um, the first thought that comes to my heart, like in my mind, is like, understand and have a real love for yourself and others, and find out what aligns you, like, spiritually, and live and seek truth and love. That was a long statement. That was like 4 statements in one, but you get the gist of it all.
Yeah, no, I love it. And the final question is, if you are, lucky enough and you make it to the end of your life as healthy as possible, whatever age that might be, what's the legacy you want to leave behind?
Oh man, just knowing I gave it all back. that every single gift I've been blessed with, man, has been packaged in. I became the best version of Henry, and that version gave it all back. And I made everything I touched, everybody I spoke with, know themselves more, love themselves more, understand the world more in the sense of like empowerment, and just make them better than where I was. Like I just did my part, in the best possible way that I could, and that was completely open in the process and in the flow.
I love that. No, I love that. And I think you're well on your way to doing that. And I say this to everyone because I think that everyone that I think is eventually going to reach that point, as long as you keep doing what you're doing and you keep believing and keep inspiring the world, like you will eventually get there. And so this is one interesting thing I just want to ask, just to wrap this up, is like, what's the feeling that you want on your journey?
Feeling?
Yeah. Like
You
were to describe, like, I'm here and I know I'm going to go. Yeah.
Just peace. Just like, it's good. Like I'm good, like I'm good here. I'm good here. I'm good with, to me it's God. I'm good with people. I'm good. I did the best I could, and I'm at peace, man. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
And I want I want nachos before I die.
Me and you both. I love nachos and guacamole. Lots of guacamole. But yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time to share.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for your time, and thanks for what you do.
No, it's been amazing. And what's the best way for people to follow you on your journey and keep up to date with your stuff?
Instagram, at Henry Ammar, HENRY AMMAR, M as in Mary. And then my podcast is Making It Happen with Henry Ammar. Instagram is probably where I swim the most. Facebook, I'm actually going to be doing some cool stuff on Facebook. So Facebook's Henry Ammar as well. So you can find me on the socials. And at some point we'll launch YouTube, but podcast, Making It Happen with Henry Ammar, Instagram at Henry Ammar, and coming soon to a theater near you. No, just that's it. Yeah, and doing some cool stuff next year, man. I'm really excited. So we'll keep everybody posted.
Awesome, man. And I'll put all the links for that stuff in the description. So no, thank you again. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right, brother. Take care. Thanks for all you're doing, man.